All right, we're live?
No, not yet.
No?
What the fuck is happening? Okay. Yes. We're live now.
Okay. Well, good evening. I'm Victoria Holtz, and this is Joyce Morales. And we are certified hypnotherapists and life and relationship coaches. And we are going to be talking a little bit about what's been swarming around social media lately, which is the high-profile case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Mm-hmm. So who's right? Who's wrong?
Maybe neither or both.
Maybe neither. Yeah, I mean, right?
It's relative, right?
Right. So which one is the narcissist, if there is a narcissist, and what went wrong? So tonight we're going to break down what made these relationships toxic, going based off of the information that has been made public. Of course, we don't really know the full in-depth detail, but what has been made public, we're going to go based on that. And what are narcissistic traits and what is trauma bond? We'll also address what could have prevented these extreme cases and give advice and resources tonight on intimate conversation relationship strategies with the HypnoChix. All right, so I have been watching the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case,
but I wanted to have a little bit where it was kind of like organic reacting.
Yeah, it has been a long case. I'm invested, and I'm gonna not lie. I have fallen asleep numerous times trying to watch it, so I have to like go back and rewatch it because if anybody else has been watching the case, it is a long case and it does drag, and it seems like the attorneys are just going in circles and circles and circles and going nowhere, and wonderful Johnny likes to kind of stretch out his answers a little bit. You know, he's great, but when he is able to speak, at least, you know. But again,
it's not because he's unable to speak, but it's because the lawyers keep interrupting him.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they keep objecting. But every time
weird.
He says,
sometimes they were objecting to as soon as he started to answer the question, and they're like,
well, there's an attorney. Amber's attorney objected his own question. It was hilarious. So weird. I was like, what? So, but I kind of feel bad because if the case truly is, you know, that he has been in this, you know, DV situation, yeah. He probably hasn't been able to speak forth. So it's like he's trying to take advantage of the time where he feels safe enough to speak forward, but everyone keeps cutting him off. So if that is the case.
And also he's an he's an actor and he's an artistic type, and it may just be that's how he talks. Because if you look at some, I mean, I know we shouldn't take people's characters necessarily into play with this, but that's kind of on par with a lot of the characters that he's played. It's like flowery language, not necessarily verbose, but indirect, which is actually, I find interesting because it's actually typically a physical way of speaking. You know, to speak in inferences.
True. Yes, so very true. I found that interesting too. Yes, because when I was watching that, I was like, all right, I'm feeling, you know, of course, we have the evidence on our end here as EMP specialists, I guess you say we are. I'm like, he's definitely an emo sexuality. He's got the emo traits. But the suggestibility, I was confused about that too, because I was like, he's speaking in inference, you know, but he could have, of course, well, you know what I'm going to say. He's a defense mechanism too.
Defense, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he can have that physical defense mechanism, which is having him speak inferentially. But yeah, I found that interesting.
Also, just physical people tend to be more artistic, and emotional people, as far as when we're talking about the personality types in the EMP model, then the emotional person tends to be more logical and direct. Right. So, yeah, it could be that he's physical with an emotional, defense because of childhood trauma. Could be the other way around. We definitely need more information, but we'll do our best to kind of suss it out while while we're
Right. Yeah, we're going based on what everybody else is seeing because, of course, we haven't lived with Johnny Depp or Amber Heard, so we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We're just going based on what we're seeing through the case, through social media, and stuff like that. So we don't have the full history, and we don't have the core traits or anything like that. So we're just going based off of what we're witnessing.
Mm-hmm.
but it's pretty plain in sight, actually. Just the behavior.
Yeah, if we're only
itself.
looking at what's actually happening right now, not at, evaluating all the other stuff, we can at least say that the behaviors that they're discussing in the court are either lean more towards an emo type of behavior or a physical type behavior.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So with that being said, so as we know, as we're watching the case now, Johnny right now is the one being, he's under the testimony portion of it. He's on the stand. So Amber has not taken the stand yet. So, but going based on the information we're hearing from Johnny, it seems like, Amber is very confrontational and he wants to escape. He wants to run off. So those right there are very common traits that a fizz and an emo would have. Not the physical violence portion of it, but the fact that, the physical always wants to fix the problem right then and there. And the emo wants to process and kind of like, I want to think about it and I don't want, any confrontation right now. I just want to have some time to process. But unfortunately, as we have been hearing, Amber does not give Johnny that time. I mean, according to Johnny, we haven't heard Amber's side yet. So, but I'm just going based on what Johnny has been saying. We haven't heard Amber's side yet, so we have to have a fair, trial.
Right.
Of examination here. But based on what his testimony is, it's pretty much she keeps coming up to him. He's trying to walk away, and she's like, "No, we need to talk about it now." But based on the recordings too, you can kind of hear there is some evidence of her kind of like, "No, you need to talk now. No, stop walking away." And he's like, "I'm leaving. I'm leaving." She's like, "No, don't go. Can go back over here and let's talk about it." And he's like, "No, I don't want to. No, I don't want things to escalate." So that's a very, would you agree, common thing that physicals. Sorry, we call it short for emos and fizzes. Physicals and emos to do. The physical wants to solve it right then and there, and the emo wants to process it and maybe discuss it later, so that way they can think rationally, logically, and analyze the situation and be able to come up with a solution that would be logical. And yeah, what do you have to say about that? What do you think?
Well, yeah. Basically, if you think of our fight or flight reflexes, then you split the population in half, right? Mm-hmm. The people who lean towards flight would be the emotionals, and the people who lean towards fight, whether it's an actual, fight, or if it's just like coming forward to solve the problem, that will be a physical. So, of course, there's a lot of other nuances to that. It's not just specifically that behavior, but it is a big part of how they try to resolve issues in their relationship. So if a physical is unhappy in their relationship, say if it's a physical that's unhappy, he's more likely to say, "Hey, you need to start dressing nicer. I really want to find you attractive." Maybe he might not be so nice about it. Maybe he'll try in the beginning. I think you should lose some weight. I think you should put some weight on. Whatever preferences they have, they're going to start asking you to do that. Where a physical female will start to change her own appearance if she feels like her emotional male partner is withdrawing or just not paying her the attention that she wants. She will do what she thinks needs to be done to get that attention, which can be dressing nicer, trying to be sexier, and things like that. And unfortunately, if emotional male continues to withdraw or isn't as responsive to her as she wants, and it can really throw her into depression.
Mm-hmm.
So if
I feel inadequate,
well, yeah, and for an emotional, our biggest fear is to be inadequate and to be judged as such. But for a physical, their greatest fear is to be rejected and abandoned. So, I know, physicals that I've dated in the past, being that I'm an emotional, I do not actually know exactly what my emotions are at the moment. I need time to go think about it because, I know that I'm having them and I can feel them in my body, but I need time to actually think about what emotion it was exactly and how I feel about it, what part of it exactly upset me, because I want to deal with it in the most logical way possible to kind of like minimize the risk, minimize the damages, because if I just bark back at you, then we're just fighting and it's not going anywhere.
Right. It's just going into a vicious cycle and
right. And
no
I don't
resolution.
want to do that. And I know other emotionals also don't want to do that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I would like to also address now, just for a heads up, I know you wanted to go live, or we wanted to go live on the group, but unfortunately it's not showing.
I was looking earlier.
Yeah. But for those of you who are hopefully going to watch this recording, we have noticed within the group that some of you have taken the ENP sexuality test. And basically, as we have mentioned through the comments, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is no, oh, a fizz is bad or an emo is bad. It just is. It's just like having two hands. I'm right hand dominant, but I still have two hands. So we plus. Oh, see, well, see, you're left hand dominant, but it's not a bad thing. It's just we use either our right hand more or our left hand more, but we possess both. So we do possess both traits of emo and fizz. It's just one's more dominant than the other. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know some people are going, oh, I'm this much of 80% fizz, is that a bad thing? It's like there's no such things as being bad. So there's nothing bad about being a fizz or being an emo, because we like I said, we possess both traits. It's more one is more dominant than the other. Like I said, it's like having two hands. My right hand is more dominant than my left hand, but I possess both hands. So it's just like that. It just is what it is.
Right. So. And, I know that in the case that we're talking about, it just happens to be that Amber appears to be more of a physical. But it doesn't mean that other physicals are like her. It's just some of the behaviors are just more coming forward type of behaviors.
Well, she has other factors mixed in with just beyond the ENP concept or the model.
There's some mental health issues going on.
Right. I mean, they seem to be identifying based on the findings so far that they are discussing in the case. It seems like some of their findings may be mental health issues going on with her. And she's also has trauma that she has admitted saying. So that for sure we can say she has had trauma, and so has Johnny. Right. Johnny and her both have had trauma.
Yeah, so we have early childhood trauma, which makes it even worse.
Yes, and that's something else I would like to say is, I know a lot of people want to jump on the. I know it's like just
humans in general, we have a tendency to jump on a bandwagon,
right?
And so there's some people for Johnny and other people for Amber Heard, but
right. But in actuality, if you look at the big picture, these two people are both victims. Because what's happening is they're feeding off of each other's traumas. Now, and now for those of you who are wondering who did take the test and they don't understand, well, how did I become a physical or how did I become an emotional? We get our traits, we adopt them from our secondary caregiver or caretaker. Sorry, not caregiver. Caretaker, which usually would be the father or father figure. However, if you did grow up in a single parent home, your primary caretaker would be both your primary and secondary. And I hope I didn't confuse you, but they take both roles.
It depends
right?
really on the. I have to be honest.
Yeah, because you could have an uncle or something like that comes in, right?
Right.
So,
for example, right, my parents got divorced when I was 3.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's an emotional. My dad's a phys. So my first couple of years that, my mom was my primary caretaker, I picked some of that up from her. Right. Because to how to communicate with her. But then they got divorced when I was 3. But then then it was my grandmother, my grandfather, my uncle, my cousin, and me and my dad in the same house. Because we're Greek. We're just like, hey, it's all family. Let's bring it together and we'll raise her in a community.
It's like it takes a village, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I had a lot of influences.
Yes.
But what was interesting is though, because when we look at the model, usually at the early childhood level, that when the person is learning their according to the book, it's sexuality, but we actually mean like your personality type and how you choose to handle things.
Right.
So I don't want you to confuse it with your sexual preference. It's not the same thing.
No.
But it's how you come forward to get attention, or how you go about getting attention. We're Greek, so one thing that looks very physical. We're loud and we hug each other, and it's just like it seems chaotic maybe to like another person's house, maybe the standard American home. But because my dad was raising me from that point forward, I never really watched my dad try to get attention from my mom.
Okay.
And so my dad didn't really marry until I was 13. So by then I was already kind of forming the critical factor, critical filter. And, it was a different dynamic, and I just wasn't sure where I fit in. So I stayed in emo.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So
your father technically is a phys, right?
Yes.
And your mom's okay.
Yeah, my mom's a high emo and my dad is a high phys.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, as you can see, that's how Joyce has adopted her trait.
So
based
it depends on your family, how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So just taking in the information that I have gathered through watching the case. So this is my
this is like your 5th day?
Huh?
Your 5th day of studying this?
No, it's like more like my 6th or 7th day. I think they're on their 9th or 10th trial or case right now. Yeah, trial. So this is what I kind of came up with, my theory. So you gotta keep in mind that Amber Heard has experienced trauma because her father, according to her, was an alcoholic and abusive towards her mother. And then you have Johnny Depp. His trauma was his mother was abusive towards his father. And his father was very submissive, and he would walk away and he would not react. So you got to think now, they may have been triggering each other's trauma by, let's say, maybe Johnny Depp had a few drinks. He got a little tipsy, and that's triggering Amber, pissing her off. And therefore, she starts, wanting to express those feelings. And then he wants to escape, therefore making her feel rejected and abandoned. And then it's like this vicious circle. So he's feeling attacked already. I'm saying like maybe in the beginning stages, like before it escalated to this point, like that could have been what started the whole issue with them. I don't know what the true intentions of their relationship is. She may have had different motives. Maybe she really don't love him to begin with. Maybe she did.
Well, she says she still loves him now, despite all this.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I'm just saying, possibly that's what maybe had started it. I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't behind closed doors, but that's just a theory. Because they might have been bringing up to the surface their traumas. He started drinking. I know he uses drugs, so either way, he's under the influence. I don't know if she uses, The most I've heard,
I
she
believe that there was some reference to that she did, but
yeah, the most I've heard was like she was drinking wine like for dinner or something. But I don't know. I don't know what her history of drug use is.
well, also
But
she's on a medication too that came up in court, and I think that that particular medication
Prozac,
is
right?
not no.
Oh, Abilify. Abilify?
Abilify. That
Yeah,
might be.
Abilify.
I don't take it, so I don't know. But that might be one of those medications you're not supposed to drink on or have. Other
You're not
substances in your
supposed to
system.
drink with Abilify. It's a mood stabilizer. But yeah,
Okay.
no, that actually makes the medication. It kind of has like a counteract.
Yeah, it makes it not work so good.
Yeah. So,
Okay,
but
well
that's my
that makes
theory.
sense. And
That's my theory. I don't know if it's correct. Like I said, it's a theory. It's a
right.
theory.
And I would second that. Of course we weren't there. We're all looking at all this in hindsight. So the best I can do is give my best guess. But I do think that we have a tendency to date people that are like the parent that is most messed up. Because we want to fix
right.
it. At least because when you grow up in an unstable home like that, you either become a scapegoat child where you're the one that everybody blames everything on, or you're codependent. And sometimes in a weird scenario, you might actually be both. But when you're codependent, you need to fix everything. And when things are unstable, you don't feel safe. So then you start to people please. And like, okay, let's get mom tucked into bed, because his mom was an alcoholic and she was abusive, right? So,
Yes.
So, okay, let's get her calm down. So she's not throwing stuff. She's not having any behaviors, whatever kind of stuff that she did. Let's get her calm down, get her into bed. And then dad will come back. Dad will come play with me or whatever. But the people-pleasing behavior is kind of codependence where you're trying to control, the environment. And actually, people who are codependent, and I would venture to say on the emo side somewhere, especially when we get really high, again, it's not bad, it just is. But because they have a tendency towards people-pleasing and trying to, like, always fix everything, they have a higher locus of control. Right? So they actually feel like they're responsible for too much stuff.
Yeah.
Like everything. They're responsible for everything.
You're right.
Which is also why we're so motivated by guilt.
Exactly.
Right.
I agree. Yeah. And I also want to add in there, since you did bring up the whole pretty much you marry your parent. Dr. John Kappas has stated in the ENP relationship strategy books actually that I hate to break this to everyone, but you might want to reflect if you are married, because he says, regardless of your gender, you marry your mother. So take a look at your spouse if you're married, or if you're dating someone in a serious relationship, and see what traits your partner has that kind of relate to your mother. And you'll be like, oh my gosh.
Well, and that's the one part where I differ with that.
Really?
And it could just be because my childhood was different. It wasn't like
it could be.
Mom and dad in the house all the way up until I was 18. It wasn't like that. So I had a tendency, and, there was multiple adult males in my house because it was my uncle and, my cousin was a girl and my dad. So the guys that I dated or even married were all physicals, and they shared similarities with both of them, those two. So they basically formed my picture of what the average male was.
So you didn't have any, you didn't marry anyone or date anyone that kind of resembled your mom at all?
No, not at all.
Wow. But they resemble more like your dad, right? Like, or at least some of them kind of had some traits like your dad.
Well, yeah, it was a mashup. It was like 50-50, my dad and my uncle.
Oh.
So, because they both kind of took that role while I was there. My grandmother, I would say she was an emotional. I spent most of my time with her. But, also it was like the 80s, so I also spent a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
You know, because when kids or your parents were at work and then you're like, oh, it'll just be a couple hours, she'll be okay, and whatever.
Right.
And then they're just like, leave a note on the refrigerator if you go to your friend's house, kind of thing.
Yes.
So, you know, so I was actually alone a lot. So maybe that that nudged me a little bit more that way, that I just became very independent. So, and that affects the relationships too, because when you grow up to be that independent and self-sufficient, and then, you know, as an emotional, and then you get into a relationship maybe with somebody who's a high physical. And so they have these standards that they want you to live up to. And they can, for somebody who's a high emotional and is very used to being independent, you're like, wow, what's all these rules? You know,
right?
Because it's not, I wasn't, it's not like infidelity or anything, because we, you know, tend not to necessarily go that route, but just in general, to be like, why does it matter how I wear my hair?
Yeah.
What, you know, like, why don't you like my shoes? It's just shoes. Exactly. You know, and I'm like, I have a hard time
adjusting to that.
Which I have been told, and so I've been told that I'm too masculine because I do what I'm going to do anyway.
Well, you're independent, but I get
that's
it.
What I mean.
Like,
but the independence becomes an issue because the guys that I attract are very high physical, so they want me. They want me to concede, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I can't though, because if I do that, I'm not actually being me.
Yeah, and then
in reality, I can give a little bit.
Right, and they probably feel as though like, oh, well, why am I here then if you can do everything? You know?
Yeah, and
you know what I
so
mean?
I'm triggering their insecurities, and you know, guys, I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but but it happens, you know, like, and so anyway, enough about me.
No, I get it. Yeah.
The Amber Heard thing, though, is that, you know, her, like you said, her dad was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And was abusive. So that's what she sees. She looks in men, you know. Kind of like, I hate to say this word. Like an asshole.
Well, it does sound like,
you know,
it does sound like she kind of,
she's attracted to, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, it does sound like she kind of did marry her mom, and he married his mom because she is claimed, you know, to be the, as of right now, like she's being accused of being the violent partner, and pretty much, you know, Johnny is her mom because he's being the one who's inflicting all the violence. So it's kind of like, you know what I mean?
I thought you said Johnny's being his mother. No, she's being Johnny's mother.
Yes.
Amber's being Johnny's mother, and Johnny is being her father. Except that he's, you know, except that he is like.
But technically, Johnny's being her mother because her mother was the one going through the DV through her childhood. So, you know what I'm saying?
I get why you say that, though, except that the alcoholism supposedly and the drugs is supposedly what is triggering. Right. True. She had made comments about, that's all he ever does. He hangs out with a bunch of old people and does drugs. And then he's like,
so obviously
did you not know who he was when you got with him? Like,
well, I mean, I don't know if he was doing it the whole time, because now I know he probably was, but I don't know. I don't know him. I don't know the guy.
I would say that he owned the Viper Room for a long time, and you know, River Phoenix died of an overdose, if I remember correctly. That happened at the Viper Room, and you know, and then that whole crew of people at the time were really hung out tight together. And Hollywood does drugs. There's a lot of drugs in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's probably why
we're not necessarily judging. We're just saying it is what it is.
No, but that could be the cause of so many extreme cases right now because of the high volume of, you know, drug use in Hollywood. I guess I don't know. Plus everything is social media.
Drug use would be an ancillary reason why things happen. The real reason why things happen is because there's unresolved trauma. Yeah. Well, not too that self-medicating. Yeah. Instead of dealing with it. Because, you know, it sucks. Sometimes dealing with it sucks.
Right.
And
Well, that's what he keeps saying. He says, I do it because it makes me feel numb, and I want to feel numb.
yeah.
He doesn't want to feel the pain anymore. And as we know, drugs distort your mentality and numb you mentally, I guess.
Well,
And
yeah, I think it depends on which ones, but I get what you're saying.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, if he truly is an emotional, which we're kind of willing to probably bet that he is, your mind is constantly going and going and going, and with what's going on in the situation right now, he's like, I'm just wanting to shut down completely.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if either side is more prone to alcoholism.
I don't know,
Because I do know some I'm aware of some physical males that have I guess it would be an emotional, maybe that's how they act out their emotional defense, by escaping.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not going to say that's all everybody for sure. You can't make a blanket statement like that. But I wonder,
it just depends
if it's a defense or if it's like it's more of an emotional thing, or if it's just all over the board. Kind of, maybe if somebody has some feedback on that they would like to chime in.
Maybe it's all over the board. It's just they react or respond to it differently.
Yeah, and it could be because there's alcoholism in my family. Not my dad, but like my uncle and my grandfather and stuff. And I grew up in the house with them. Maybe it's just I'm more likely to see it because it's on my radar.
Yeah.
So, and nothing accusatory, but we're just curious of like where it might fall in the spectrum.
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, if anybody knows, comment down below.
Yeah. Maybe we could do a study. But yeah, anyway. So basically his behavior, whether she finds it understimulating or whatever her reasons are for getting triggered, then she demands it to be fixed right now. Right
away, right then and there. Based on the recordings and what's going on during the trial, that's what's being displayed, is she wants things resolved right then and there on the spot. No walking away. That just really triggers her. Mm-hmm. To what extent, I really don't know until
she gets on his bed. That's one.
But isn't she denying that she pooped on the bed? I don't know.
I mean, I would deny it if it was me. I would say, no, I didn't do that.
Well, I mean, why would you poop on the bed if you're going to deny it? Obviously, she wanted him to see it. So it's like, why deny it? Just be like, yeah, I shit on your bed. It's like, because I was mad, which is weird. But I mean, if you're going to do it, I mean, you might as well claim it.
She may have claimed it to him and then is denying it in court because now that she sees everybody else's face and they're like, ew, and she might be backpedaling.
I know. They keep calling. I know now that she's being called Amber Turd. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, I hope they've cut themselves off from social media while this is going on, because I'm pretty sure that's really stressful. One thing I wanted to mention though, right, is that while we were talking about like outlying factors, is that the court psychologist or the forensic psychologist that's assigned to the case, Dr. Shannon Curry, has said that Amber Heard shows signs of histrionic and borderline personality disorders. So, I know we were going to talk about narcissism to a certain degree.
Right.
I would say that there's some similar traits, but the underlying kind of motivation is slightly different, even though it might look similar on the outside. Okay.
Yeah.
And basically, and of course, it said that it shows signs of both, and these are Axis B kind of personality disorders in the DSM-5. So, histrionic personality disorder is basically the female version of antisocial personality disorder, and the reason why females are normally diagnosed with that as opposed to antisocial personality disorder is because they rely heavily on sex to get their way. Where borderline personality disorder, they have a very weak sense of self, and they really just have like their version or their perception of self is they don't think highly of themselves, and they basically don't think, that they have like a worth in and of themselves. So they have a tendency to copy other people, and it's this masking behavior. I know earlier you mentioned you called it mirroring.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
one thing that's common is that sometimes people who have ADHD or high functioning autism can sometimes be misdiagnosed as borderline personality disorder in females, because both both of those learning disabilities, females still retain that part of their their brain activity that makes them want to connect with other people, right? Whereas a boy who's autistic is, depending on how severe it is, he may care less about socializing, right? But we, as females, you learn that there's all this pressure, and then we have to fit in, and we have to like get along, to just go along, or however it goes, go along to get along. That's what it is. So that you can get by, right? Because the way women as a whole socialize is different than men. Men have a tendency to establish their pecking order really early. As far as like with each other, they figure out who's the leader and who's like the,
Right, kind of like a wolf pack, like.
Right. Yeah.
There's gotta be the leader and the pack.
Yeah, and it takes girls longer because we've learned to go along to get along, right? So then we'll go along for a while, and then they've all been repressing, and then resentment builds up, and then somebody blows up, and then so now the whole thing is gotten disheveled. So the girls have a tendency to learn this masking behavior to get by, so they don't get picked on or whatever. So it's possible that she actually has neither, and she might be untreated, ADHD or even autism. Maybe
Maybe.
I wouldn't say that these behaviors are necessarily that, but it's something to consider because it does happen.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because had her family maybe been more stable, she may have never needed these interventions, or at least if they were aware that they were that unstable, they could have gotten her help when she was younger.
Yeah.
But these disorders don't get diagnosed until you're after 18 years old, because your personality is so malleable.
Yeah.
Prior to being 18 years old. So they would have just, if she was diagnosed with anything, it could have just been an obsessive defiant disorder. Because that's usually what they would label those type of behaviors until she was about 18, and then they could see where she fits on the scale.
Yeah, but as of right now, throughout social media, YouTube, and everything like that, right now they're throwing around, narcissistic personality disorder, and we're not diagnosing. We're just we'll go through real quick some of the traits of a narcissist to see if it matches up to what these accusations are about, whether it be Amber Heard or Johnny Depp, because some people are actually even saying Johnny Depp is a narcissist. Like, I know Howard Stern had mentioned that he was a narcissist, and I think there was a few other people who had, throughout.
It could be a difference. It could be a grandiose narcissist and a
covert
narcissist. Who knows?
But
so some of the things I was gonna say, of course, we're not diagnosing anybody, like you said.
Nope.
And so I'm only speaking as far as what the doctor had mentioned. But I also would like to caution everybody that, because there's a tendency to throw this term narcissist around a little bit too loosely. Okay? Anything that's in the DSM-5, any of those mental health disorders, you can look through it and find a couple that fit you. Almost any of them.
Right.
So just because you have a few traits doesn't mean you have that disorder. There's a specific qualification that you need to have so many and to a certain extent. So
Yes.
Just because something looks like it might be a narcissistic trait does not mean that she has a personality disorder, or that he has a personality disorder, and any of us do. So just throw that out there. It's a trait is a trait, but together, that's when we can start, basically behavior patterns are really how you end up diagnosing stuff. And we're hypnotherapists. We mostly focus on self-help and helping you build better relationships and stuff like that. We're not in the practice of diagnosing people. So, what we have to offer is our best opinion based off of, the research that's already out there.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm done with my soapbox. Sorry.
Okay. Well, would you like me to read what we have here about narcissistic traits, or do you want me to start with grandiose types, or like the actual traits, or do you want me to give like the definition of?
Let's first, I guess, bring to people's attention that there's more than one kind of narcissist, because what we tend to think of when we think of a narcissist is somebody who's full of themselves. They want to be the center of attention all the time, and stuff like that. So, but there is other ways for them to get those needs met with and they can even have kind of subversive type behaviors. So I think we should cover some of the traits.
Okay, so you want me to go ahead and just jump into the traits and skip
to mention the different kinds first, because they'll play out differently based on the type.
All right, so real quick, I'll go through this, and so this way we're kind of educating you on what a narcissist is, so that way maybe it's not used so loosely, as we were saying, Okay, so narcissistic traits, NPD is one of the 10 personality disorders in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, which is also the DSM-5. A personality disorder is a mental health condition that causes someone to think and act in ways that harm themselves and their relationships with others.
Yes.
Personality disorders cause impairments in functioning at work, in school, with self-esteem and identity, and in relationships. NPD is one of the Cluster B personality disorders. Cluster B personality disorders are associated with dramatic, emotional, irrational, and erratic behavior. Other examples of Cluster B personality disorders include borderline personality disorder, which is BPD, histrionic personality disorder, which is HPD, and antisocial personality disorder, which is ASPD.
Yes.
Okay. The main hallmarks of narcissism include grandiosity, extreme self-focus, an inflated sense of self-worth, and a strong need for praise and recognition. For a therapist to diagnose someone with NPD, someone must exhibit these traits in pathological, unhealthy ways that interfere with their daily functioning and their ability to relate to others. Okay. Was there anything you wanted to add on to there before I start mentioning the types of narcissism? Or the traits, I mean? Sorry.
Well, okay. When it is diagnosed, in somebody's medical records, it's going to say cluster B personality disorder with blah, blah, blah traits. So, so if you're ever reading your medical records and you see that's what that means. So, because they don't normally say like just straight out BPD or whatever. But one of the things I was going to mention is that because I was actually married to a diagnosed narcissist, that even though they do display the constant attention seeking and grandiosity, they actually have a very low sense of self.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a vacuum.
Very low. Yeah.
And that's why they need the constant supply, because without the attention, they're empty.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, that's true.
They'll mask it and they'll say that, no, I have great self-esteem. I think I'm better than everybody else. But in reality, they do not.
No, they don't. So what we'll do is we'll go through the traits, and as we go through them, maybe you know someone or been in a relationship with someone that had possessed these traits.
That doesn't mean go and diagnose them.
No, do not diagnose them.
Their face like, oh, I knew it. You're a narcissist.
I knew you're a narcissist.
but maybe rethink your situation a little bit. Consider counseling, because it could just sometimes things that present as a narcissistic trait but not a full-blown disorder are fixable. But the disorder, of course, is a little bit more difficult to deal with, because as they're dealing with they have a tendency towards pathological lying, the actual disorder.
Yes.
So they will also have a tendency to mess with their providers in session. That will just lie to them, and it was some weird stuff.
Yes.
So
yes. So let's this again is for educational purposes. This is not for us or yourselves to diagnose. This is just so maybe you could identify it, maybe help somebody. Be like, hey, maybe we should go to counseling together or something. Get some help. Like as in your partner or a friend. I don't know. But all right, so let's go through the traits. Grandiose feelings. So a person with NPD might exhibit grandiosity or a sense of superiority. Superiority. Thank you. I was like,
it's late. Our tongues get tied.
I was like, that does not sound like I'm reading that right. Okay. So they may believe they're entitled to special favors, praise, or admiration from others. They might also come off as condescending or arrogant. People with NPD might also be overly focused on impressing other people, whether through outward displays of wealth, status, intelligence, or beauty. Okay, next is extreme self-focus. So extreme self-focus is another common narcissistic trait. While many people are self-absorbed to an extent, someone with NPD will focus almost exclusively on themselves and their own personal gain. They might talk about themselves constantly or have a hard time feeling empathy for other people. This can lead many people with NPD to face challenges in areas of intimacy and relationship. As they relate to others only superficially, they might even exploit others to get what they want. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, in that regards, I think it's interesting that, because from my observations and from what I've seen as far as like reading about it as well, is that they do actually possess a high sensory acuity, so they can see what mood you're in. Which is how sometimes they get their supply by stirring the pot, and so they may either love bomb you, so that you're giving them the positive supply, or if you've stood up for yourself and they didn't like what you did, then they're gonna demean you or embarrass you or do some other behaviors which are of course harmful, but those are a lot different. I don't know. I don't want to go off on a tangent but it's a lot, I think, for people to process, because they get confused by but they love me this minute and then they're mean to me, and it's very confusing for the person that's dealing with it. But the person who has the disorder, it's also hard for them, just for saying, people are people. They still deserve some empathy, and they should have treatment so they can have a better quality of life if they were to take it seriously. But first they have to understand that that they're struggling with this, and that do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if they have that epiphany. Maybe some do.
Yeah, that's really hard for people who have this disorder, because they don't really see that they have that flaw, or they don't want to be known as having that flaw.
Right, exactly. So there's some denial going on. But like the sensory acuity, like I was talking about, is they're aware of your emotions, and that's how they get their supply. But they're where their range of emotions are is not the same. So, you know, they almost like they're understimulated, and so even just having to feign happiness at times.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and like
I know
the classical fake smile.
Oh yeah. My ex, in fact, it was so crazy to me. But he was also diagnosed with sociopath, being a sociopath.
Okay.
Diagnosed. I'm not diagnosing him, but that's what the psychologist diagnosed him with.
Okay.
But it would just be so crazy because he can switch like that. You know, like if someone is around, and 1 minute he could be calling me every name in the book, and then if someone, you know, comes into the room or we're somewhere, you know, he'd be like, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, yeah. And then, like, he would actually use terms that I would use, or use expressions I would use, and I'm like, that's not him, that's me. And I'm like,
Yeah,
the heck?
yeah,
That's
it's
so
that
weird.
copying of behavior because it's not coming from them authentically. So they're actually, when I'm talking about the sensory acuity, some will actually study, you know,
Yes.
how we make our faces and how we communicate so that they can replicate it.
Yeah.
To seem more authentic and more genuine with you.
Right. But it's so weird because, you know, I thought, well, I knew I could see right through it because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so
But
fake.
could you in the
It's so
beginning?
fake. Huh?
But could you in the beginning?
No, not in the
Okay,
beginning
so like
because
you
he
still married
wasn't.
him though.
Yeah, not in the beginning. He fooled
Okay.
me. Totally fooled me. But he wasn't mimicking me at the time. When he started mimicking me and started expressing himself the same way I would express myself to people, and I knew that wasn't his, you know, baseline personality. And I'm like, maybe it's just because we've been around each other for so long. Maybe that's why he's doing it. But then I started realizing he's doing it because he must lack the empathy or something, and he has to like kind of act like he does have empathy or something. Because as he would walk away, he wouldn't give a damn what just happened. Or it's not my fucking problem. Or sorry, you know what I mean? My effing problem.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just told them you were sorry for their loss or whatever the case may be at that time.
Yeah, and but it was completely insincere. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it'd be very odd.
Well, see, okay, so that he has antisocial personality disorder, and my ex-husband has narcissistic personality disorder. So they're like we were saying earlier, that some of these traits look similar across the thing, but their intentions are really kind of different. You know, even a narcissist doesn't always go for to be malignant in the situation. They just want to get their needs met. They need to be seen as good.
Yes.
You know, and when they're not, that's when they lose their temper.
Mm-hmm.
Because once they feel like they can no longer recover being the good guy or the good girl, you know, then that's when kind of all hell breaks loose.
Right, and you just reminded me of something. Going back to the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, I don't know if you've seen it, but they actually brought out a recording of. So I guess in the and this will apply to what you're just talking about. So in the beginning of the relationship, Amber Heard used to take off Johnny Depp's boots when he would get home from work and pour him a glass of wine.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. But that was her thing.
I'm not doing that for anybody. Just let you know now. That's not on the table.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Okay, continue.
So, but every night after work, she would take off his boots for him and, pour him a glass of wine. And one night, I guess she was on the phone and she was busy, taking care of business on the phone. And Johnny was like, well, just take off my boots, and relax. And when she got off the phone, she was like, what are you doing? Like, she was genuinely pissed. She's like, what are you doing? Or maybe it wasn't recording, but I guess, or maybe it was. I don't remember. But anyway, She says, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm taking off my boots."
Yeah.
And she's like, "That's not your job. That's my job. That's what I'm here for." And I'm like, why would someone get so upset about that? I mean, we know why, but it's like, wow, that's so extreme. I mean, and I can see, oh, honey, you should have waited. I would have done that for you. Or it wasn't like that. It was she was very, very upset.
Yeah, like she was slighted.
Right. So that's why I wanted to bring it up to you, because you were talking about, them wanting to be the good person.
That's the part where the borderline personality and narcissistic personality can look kind of similar, is these temper tantrums.
Yeah, and plus they keep bringing up recently, how she's dressing like Johnny in court, and she's kind of mimicking his movement, like putting on his glasses.
Some of those pictures I don't agree with so much that they have brought up. Like who doesn't?
I don't know. It was pretty damn close.
You have to go to court. Who doesn't have multiple suits when you have to go? So I don't know about that one.
I don't know, because I was.
They used to be married. Maybe they
I thought about that. I thought about that too. I thought about that too. I considered that, but
one was silver, one was gold. Maybe she was just like, maybe if he sees it, he'll know that I still love him. Somebody who knows?
Maybe I don't know. I mean,
I don't know.
Me, I mean, every married couple's different, but I know for a fact, like, whenever me and my husband accidentally wear the same colors, he'd be like, really? And or I would be like, really? You have to wear gray? I'm wearing gray today. He'd be like, oh, I'll go change. But some people like that, they're like, oh, look, how
some
cute.
People just like there was a funny kind of side story.
But it is kind of odd. I don't know. I was watching some of it while you're drinking your water. I just wanted to say that, because it was like, it was like a day after he would wear a certain suit, and it was like down to like the B clip that she had on her tie or whatever the heck it was. But it was just like, is it coincidental or is it purposeful? I don't know. But obviously, I don't know. Well, but everyone, a lot of people are talking about that. So if it is purposeful, let's just say, theoretically it was on purpose. Wouldn't that be possibly a narcissistic tactic that narcissists use? Like mirroring, like we were talking about, like just saying, like,
I would say no. And this is why, because the mirroring usually is to build rapport. Okay?
Right. But
she's already broken the rapport. They're in court. So at this point, a narcissist would either really play up being the victim part or go for the throat, right? Mm-hmm. But if she's copying him, that would be more in line with what Dr. Curry is saying, that she's possibly borderline personality disorder, because with their sense of self being so low, mm-hmm. right, that they feel like they need to copy other people, mm-hmm. to be valuable. So, or to, again, also for rapport, but like say if the relationship was new between the two of them, she might pretend to like all the same stuff that he likes.
Right.
And even
but do you think maybe it would be more for the public, because a lot of people now, since a lot of things are coming out to the table, like people are siding with Johnny, and she's like, oh,
yes. I was going to go with that, because right now she doesn't necessarily care about rebuilding rapport with him, but she knows publicly the general public is leaning towards supporting Johnny Depp. So mm-hmm. what is she going to do? She's going to model herself after the person who is beloved.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Receiving the support, because she wants to be supported too. She wants to be believed. And I mm-hmm. do think that in her heart and in her mind, she really does feel that she was abused, and maybe doesn't have the mental or emotional capacity to even mm-hmm. understand that what she did was possibly abuse.
That's a possibility. Yeah, definitely.
Because when you basically are like, okay, the real me, and I think everybody can relate to this to a lesser degree, where we've pretended to like stuff or do things to get along with people that, you know what I mean? I think at some point we've all done this. Maybe it was in high school or whatever. But this is like a much amplified behavior where she did, like, if she was herself, nobody would like her. That's the base thought that she has. So she has to be somebody else. So she decides to be whoever she's with. And, you know, at first you're like, oh, this is like with your ex, you know, this is like, oh, we have this crazy rapport with each other. We like so many different things. And then, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like single white female kind of situation.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
yes.
it's like, it's getting a little, maybe not that extreme. Okay. That was a crazy movie, but you know, but just in general, you're like, well,
I mean, he wasn't wearing my underwear, I don't think.
This is a little bit out of my comfort zone. You're a little bit too much like me now.
Right, yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't know if he was wearing my underwear. At least when I was home, he was. It was pretty damn close to being like a little bit in my, you know, getting in my comfort zone. I was like, wait a minute, you know, why are you?
Right,
yeah.
But he would have had a different motivation that she would have. She would have done.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
In her mind, for survival. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
He would have done it because he was antisocial personality disorder. He would have done it to have some kind of malignant control over you.
Yeah, manipulation.
To manipulate you.
Yeah.
And although she may have manipulative behaviors, in her mind, she is doing it to survive. Because she's coming from a victim mindset that is extremely amplified. And so she is doing these things to get her needs met. Where her needs are to be seen as a person. Yeah.
So there you go. So a lot of people are like kind of bamboozled about why she's kind of mimicking Johnny Depp. Yeah. This could be a theory and a thought that you can think about. Whatever you think. Put your comments down below why you think she's dressing like him. Maybe they do share the same, you know, style of clothes. Maybe she is doing it for that.
Yeah, and maybe it's because they were married and they lived together and they went shopping together. So they still have, you know, who changes their entire wardrobe just because they break up with somebody?
Kim Kardashian.
Well, that would be nice. I wish we all had that money, but we don't.
Well, I'm sure they got the money to do that, but you know, they probably still have some stuff lingering around.
Do you think Kim bought all her shoes back?
Huh?
Oh, remember the first episode we were talking about how Kanye had made Kim get rid of all of like clothes and shoes, like 250 pairs of her favorite shoes. And you know, what do you think that she went and she bought her shoes back?
I doubt that. She went and bought some new shoes, girl.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, do you want me to continue reading?
Yes, please. Sorry,
traits?
I'm getting you on track.
So it's okay. So carrying on with the narcissistic traits, you have inflated sense of self-worth. Yeah. An inflated sense of self-worth is another common narcissistic trait. People with NPD might expect special treatment for no reason at all. They might brag or exaggerate their accomplishments and see themselves as uniquely gifted and deserving. I have dealt with that, and it's horrible. Okay, not myself, but been with someone that displayed that. All right, so strong need for praise and recognition. People with NPD usually struggle with their self-esteem, as Joyce was mentioning, and sense of identity. They often rely on others to maintain a positive view of themselves, resulting in an overwhelming longing for praise and recognition. This leads many people with narcissistic traits to require constant external ego stroking. They might also feel obsessively jealous about someone else's positive traits or accomplishments.
Which is probably why the masking or the
mimicking
behaviors, yeah.
Right. Theoretically speaking.
Yes.
We're not for sure, but it could be a possibility. Okay, so as Joyce was saying, there's more than one type of narcissism or narcissist. So here are a few right here. There's overt narcissism. So that's agentic narcissism. Agentic, agentic narcissism. So Overt narcissism, also called agentic narcissism, is what you might think of as the classic and most obvious form of NPD. Someone experiencing overt narcissism is excessively preoccupied with how others see them. Mm-hmm. They're often overly focused on status, wealth, flattery, and power due to their grandiosity and sense of entitlement. Many overt narcissists are high achieving and deeply sensitive to criticism, no matter how slight. Mm-hmm. And that's when they get pissed. When you don't praise them properly or pay attention to them right away. All right. And then we have the covert one that we keep kind of mentioning.
This is the one I'm more interested in because it's less obvious to people.
Yeah. This is like the undercover narcissist. All right. So covert narcissism or closet narcissism is what is also called vulnerable narcissism. So covert narcissism, also known as closet narcissism or vulnerable narcissism, isn't as obvious as overt narcissism. Like other people with NPD, someone with covert narcissism has an inflated sense of self-importance and craves admiration from others. However, someone living with covert narcissism might display more subtle and passive negative behaviors. Rather than bragging about themselves or demanding respect, they might engage in blaming, shaming, manipulation, or emotional neglect to get what they want and keep the focus on themselves. They also might see themselves as a victim. Mm-hmm. All right. And then
I would say that both, even the grandiose one still perceives himself as a victim.
Right.
But yeah, so, all right. So the vulnerable narcissist is basically, the world sucks. And
like a pessimist.
Is everybody else's fault but mine.
Yeah, like a pessimist. Yeah, like they're just very...
Yeah, but like extremely pessimistic.
Right.
Beyond just normal pessimism. But to the point where it's chronic and interferes with their quality of life and their ability to maintain relationships. Because who can really, honestly, when somebody's chronically negative, how can you stay negative?
It's so hard to...
I mean, unless you're also a negative person and you're both feeding off of each other, it would be very difficult to be able to sustain it where one person is concerned about their mental health and being, doing their best to be happy or whatever. And then you have this other person that is just like, no, life sucks. And I'm going to show you how bad it sucks every day.
Right. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. That's hard. That's another hard one to get through too.
It's like,
that's an energy drainer right there.
It is. Because, you're thinking about how there's like chronic complaining.
Yes.
Never any effort actually to fix it. Because they enjoy the complaining.
Oh, absolutely. I have ran into so many people like that. No matter what you suggest to them or advise them to do, and it could be something very simplistic, they don't want to put any effort into it all. They're like, no, I'm not complaining.
They might even get really offended by the fact that you even said it at all. Like, how dare you assume?
Yes.
I'm like, well, I would want to try. If it was actually as terrible as you're making it out to be, why would you not try?
Some people just like being miserable. They get off on that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's, to a degree, it can be a form of getting your supply because, I mean, at least until you burn somebody out, but then there'll be some people who are very empathetic and want to, make you feel better and want you to be happier. And they might give you the whole right arm trying to make you happy. And then, only to find out that now they don't have an arm and you're still not happy. And then you're like, well, what else do you want?
What do you want from me? We want you miserable like me.
Yeah. So like that would be like an energy vampire for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right. So the next one is antagonistic narcissism. So while all people with narcissistic traits might be overly concerned with how they appear to others, antagonistic narcissists are particularly concerned with coming out on top. So antagonistic narcissism is defined by a sense of competitiveness, arrogance, and rivalry. Mm-hmm. Someone with antagonistic narcissism might try to exploit others to get ahead. They might also put others down or start arguments in attempt to gain the upper hand or appear dominant.
Okay.
Okay. And then next is communal narcissism. So
that one's a newer for me. So
is that okay? Yeah. Well, we're gonna learn it today. All right. So communal narcissism is like someone living with covert narcissism. Someone experiencing communal narcissism might not appear to be ego-driven at all. They might initially come across as selfless or even as a martyr. Sorry,
martyr.
I had my I had my mouse across there. Oh, and, little flashy thing, and I was like, "That's not right. That's martyr." Anyway, so martyr, but their internal motivation is to earn praise and admiration, not help others. Interesting. To that end, these people often place themselves at the forefront of social causes or communities, usually as the leader or the face of a movement. So people with communal narcissism see themselves as more empathetic, caring, or selfless than others, and often display moral outrage. I think.
So I would say they have more of like a savior complex, kind of.
Yeah, probably. That's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, it does sound like that. But they do say that well, not necessarily in a narcissistic part, but that one of the main the words don't want to come out right now.
It will after we get off of here. You'll be like, "That's the word I was looking for."
I hate that. The other day I had to tell Jennifer something and I couldn't remember what it was, and then so I wrote myself a note before I went to bed so my brain could work on it all night. And then I remembered as soon as I woke up. I was like, "What's the thing?"
Yeah, that's what happens.
But yeah, oh god.
So savior complex.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay, so no, I lost it. It's gone.
No, you lost it. Okay.
I remember when it's not important, when
probably when I start reading about malignant narcissism, maybe it'll pop up. So I think this is the last.
I have it. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Oh, I was like, oh yeah. Okay, so I think this is the last one here. So you got the malignant narcissism is often seen as the most severe or potential abusive form of NPD. Someone with malignant narcissism has the same egocentric self-absorption and sense of superiority as other narcissists. They also have traits associated with antisocial personality disorder, which is ASPD, such as aggression, paranoia, and lack of empathy. They might even have a sadistic streak, which is true. In fact, to be honest, like with my ex, I was honestly like considering like, is he a psychopath or is he a narcissist? Because he lacked the empathy. I mean, he didn't torture animals as far as I know, but but he was very sadistic in many ways, and it really makes you think.
So he was probably on. Well, you said he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, but maybe if there was narcissism, it would have maybe been the malignant one.
Yeah, definitely.
I do remember what I was going to say now, and I scribbled it down while you were talking.
See? I told you. I knew it.
Okay. Also with antisocial personality disorder, some of the most popular vocations for them are politicians, preachers and clergy, and lawyers. Which would make sense. Also, how like the communal narcissist, because it gives them an endless supply of people. And although usually with the antisocial personality disorder, they have a malignant kind of agenda to get ahead. And to like, take care of number one first,
right?
But the the communal narcissist who believes that maybe even feels selfless, but in the end wants to be appreciated. Wants that praise. So, those, like I was saying, that those are definitely a lot harder to tell. But I would say that I think this is why we need to be careful with maybe some religious leaders, and then question, like me particularly, I'm Christian and I'm an Orthodox Christian, and the Bible tells you to test everyone, test every teacher, to see if what they teach is consistent. And but you will get some religious leaders who really will not want you to question them at all. Like, they're supposed to be the sole authority. And if that, whether you're Christian or any other different religion, if that's not consistent with what your scriptures say, then really dig deeper on this person, because it's possible that if they're claiming to be the sole authority and that nobody else in the world could ever possibly be right but them, and it's like divine infallibility type of stuff, that's a bad sign.
Right.
Definitely. And that usually once you're on the wrong side of that person, it's going to get ugly, because that's how a lot of cult leaders run things. And there are some religions that are kind of borderline cult.
Yeah.
And I don't want to offend anybody, so we won't go down that route. But, and we all have different opinions of whose is whose. Right. But I will just say it's worth it, regardless of whatever your religion is, to read your texts versus what the person is actually telling you. And just because that tends to be a vocation that they migrate to, because there comes an authority with that position. You know what I mean? True. And because like if you're going to a congregation, well, there's so many people. So then there's all these people coming to them with their problem and stuff. So like, make sure the person actually really cares. And they're not pretending to care so that they can get their supply of drama met. But that, and again, the same reason why it goes for lawyers and politicians, because they have like an endless supply of drama.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
so
not, of course, again, not all lawyers, politicians, and clergy have those disorders, but we should be mindful to really just at least just have some awareness, Yeah,
knowledge is power.
Yeah.
But again, real quick, because I know we're almost running out of time here, but I want to go through one more time the diagnosis aspect of it and treatment.
Okay, yeah.
So that way, just to reinforce, we're not diagnosing, and unfortunately, we are not. It's out of everyone's scope of practice to diagnose unless you're a psychotherapist or a psychologist, so.
Right,
or a doctor. Okay, so. But even then, I think you have to still be going to a psychologist. But besides the point.
Psychiatrist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So to diagnose you or your loved one with NPD, a psychotherapist will use the diagnostic criteria for NPD in the DSM-5, which we have mentioned, as laid out by the American Psychiatric Association, which is the APA. They might use diagnostic tools such as surveys and ask you questions about your life, identity, past, and relationships. According to the DSM-5, a person with NPD must have chronic long-term impairments in social and personal functioning due to their narcissistic traits. So your partner can't just wake up, the next night in a bedroom going, "You're being a narcissist." So anyway, all right. So they must also display pathological personality traits that affect their relationships and well-being. Also, the challenges faced by a person with NPD can't be attributed to their developmental stage, such as adolescence, or other issues with their mental or physical health, such as substance abuse. All right. So,
did you
treatment.
say can or cannot?
For what?
I thought it sounded like you said can't, but
no.
That would be inaccurate.
So also the challenges faced by a person with NPD can't be attributed to their developmental stage, such as adolescence, or other issues with their mental or physical health, such as substance abuse.
Okay. Making sure I heard you right. Thank you.
Okay. And then for treatment, so someone with NPD might not seek treatment, which we mentioned, because they may not realize they have a problem.
Right.
Instead, their loved ones might notice their symptoms before they do. Other people with narcissistic traits may realize that they are struggling but might feel sensitive to criticism from therapists. Okay.
Yeah.
So, however, people with NPD can seek out and benefit from treatment.
Yes.
Researchers don't entirely understand what causes someone to develop NPD, but it's likely due to a combination of neurological factors, childhood trauma,
yes,
genetics, and or environmental and upbringing. So the mainline treatment...
I would say that they would normally score high on the ACEs. Well, since you said childhood trauma, because the ACEs are the adverse childhood
Yeah. True. Yeah, so the mainline treatment for NPD is psychotherapy. People with NPD might also benefit from couples counseling, family counseling, and support groups.
Yes.
Psychotherapy can help people with NPD in several areas, such as developing a sense of self that doesn't rely so heavily on outside recognition, setting realistic goals, dealing with and healing from past traumas, improving relationships with partners, friends, colleagues, and relatives, and developing a greater sense of empathy for others.
Right.
Okay, so there you go.
I feel like some REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy, or CBT would be appropriate.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because
I agree.
There's basically that there's a there's an intellectual deficit. Not saying they're not intelligent. I don't mean that, but as far as processing emotions,
right? Yes.
Because like we were saying, they have the sensory acuity to know when somebody else's emotions are high, but they may not be able to articulate or problem solve on their own in a way that is healthy or productive, and so it turns into this disorder.
Right. Yes. So that right there is just some knowledge. How's that go? Food for thought. There you go. Yes, food for thought. There you go. Food for thought. So when you hear the term narcissist being thrown around very, very loosely, because that is such a trendy word these days, like, oh, she's such a narcissist. Look at her taking selfies of herself on Instagram again. Yeah. So it's not, it doesn't work that way. So, unless you're a psychotherapist and then you're diagnosing, but even then you don't have enough information. So,
you didn't do all the assessments for them.
Yeah, you didn't do all the assessments, so you're not doing it properly.
So it's an opinion and not a diagnosis. Yes. And since we're talking about this stuff, I do think it's important to note that as hypnotherapists, we can work with somebody who has certain disorders and diagnoses in the DSM-5 if it's in conjunction with them seeing a primary mental health practitioner. Like for us, what we do is predominantly self-help, right? And helping you reprogram your behaviors. So we would not be the primary mental health person for you. You would need to go see somebody that's licensed in your state, and then whether it's us or another hypnotherapist or even a life coach, it's an ancillary thing that we would need to, the therapist would need to be aware that you're working with us. And that we should maybe not discuss everything about you, but that we should be able to like maybe discuss and share notes with each other. So there should be some consent forms to be sent back and forth. So just keep that in mind. I know that when we're dealing with mental health stuff, it can be embarrassing for the person that's suffering with it. But just understand that, whether, it's a licensed mental health therapist or it's a life coach or a hypnotherapist, we're all here to help you.
Yeah.
So the more honest you are with us, the easier it is for us to help you. So there's really no need to be ashamed when you come to see us. That's your safe place. Right.
We're working as a team. It's just kind of like if you go to your primary care physician and they refer you out to, let's say, orthopedic, they're going to work together to make sure you get the right treatment. So that's pretty much, we're not doctors though, but like, that's pretty much how we work. We work as a team. It's like, we have to communicate with the doctor so that way, they're on board and they're telling us, like, let's say you wanted to come in to lose weight and, you're diabetic. We need to know that. So that way we're not telling you, oh, just, try eating salads for a week. And, you go and your blood sugar drops and, well, she said to just eat salads all week. And it's like, whoa, you didn't have any carbs at all. No wonder why your blood sugar dropped. That's going against, that's a contraindication and, going against the doctor's orders. So instead of, potentially doing something that's going to...
We've taken an oath to do no harm, so help us help you.
That's what I was going to say. Instead of doing something that could potentially harm you, we're going to work with the doctor to make sure everything goes smoothly and you get the, an effective treatment and results that you want.
Synergistic treatment so that it's the most help for you.
Yes, absolutely. So that's we're looking out for you, not for us. So...
Well, that's why we should be looking out for us too. We're looking out for everybody.
Well, we are, but more. But our intention is like we want to make sure you get the proper treatment and the safest treatment possible. So that's why we like to correspond with. We have to correspond with the doctors just to make sure we're.
And that doesn't mean that we would necessarily tell them everything that happens in the session, but they should be aware that you're seeing us, and if they need to communicate with us directly, then you may have to sign some paperwork so that we can do that, because it's more important for you to get the best help than to be embarrassed, because being embarrassed doesn't help. Right. Yeah.
Yes. And everybody has problems, and we've heard many of them. So I'm sure whatever you got to bring to the table won't be a shocker for us. We'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So let's
a lot.
Yeah. So let's figure out how we could fix this for you. Let's get you back on track.
Mm-hmm.
So, before we head off of here, since these past, I'll make this real short, but these past few months, we've been seeing a lot of men coming forth that have been victims of, DV. And that's really challenging for, I would assume, for a man to come out admittingly to,
It does tend to go underreported with men. I think that there's a big stigma and I'm sure some embarrassment and stuff, because there's the social expectation of what a man should be, so certain tough or I think that we have a lot of very unfair and unhealthy gender expectations of each other. For women too. Right. Maybe like we have. We should have
friends and coworkers. If you're a dude, and if you go to work saying, "Hey, my wife is being physical with me, or my girlfriend's being physical with me," oh, you're such a wimp. You're not, doing.
Yeah, they might not even tell their friends because they're embarrassed.
Oh yeah, they won't, and they have to internalize it because they feel shame and embarrassed that they're experiencing this.
Hold on, they don't really have to. They feel like they have to, according to their particular situation at the time. Sure. But there, and I do know that certain types of mental health professions, it might be easier to get in to see a nurse practitioner than it is to get in to see a psychiatrist. That whole thing can be a little bit frustrating because you might be on a waiting list or whatever, but do it anyway, because it's worth it for you in the end to get the help that you need to live your best life. Okay.
Exactly.
Because hiding it or developing, unhealthy coping mechanisms doesn't just hurt you. It also hurts the people that you love. So if you don't feel like it's safe to be able to talk to somebody, or your spouse or even your best friend, you don't feel like you could be vulnerable with them like that. Sorry, I got like a little frog in my throat.
Okay. Get her out.
That sense of not feeling safe is very damaging, because then all of a sudden it generalizes and then you don't feel safe anywhere. And, so even if you feel that way right now, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't do it to you. Maybe I did. Still, I'm sorry. But come forward anyway, and let's start having a conversation and getting you the right help that you need, because, you know, it's not just you. I mean, it is you, and you're the most important in the factor, but it also affects the people that you care about, and you can't hide these things. And I know sometimes you have like wives or girlfriends, you know, or if you're in a same-sex relationship, your other partner is like, you know, why don't you tell me anything? And they're nagging you, and then you know, you're not even ready to deal with the issue. And then, you know, you kind of either shut down, you run away, maybe blow up, because it's such a sore subject, because you're used to stuffing it down for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's okay to acknowledge that that's not healthy.
Right.
And because our emotions are meant to teach us and move us towards action. So it's important for us to go to therapy, learn better ways of coping with them, build our emotional intelligence, so that we're like, oh, I'm angry because that hurt me. And hopefully that your spouse or partner, whoever, respects you enough to acknowledge that what they did actually hurt, you know, and then you can work on why is it a trigger in the first place, those kind of things. But you're important, and your mental health is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I know there's a little bit of soapbox. You have any to add?
No, that was great. Just, you know, we need to start addressing and focusing on, you know, DV going both ways. Men and women experience it, and we need to treat it equally, and not, oh, you know, this poor woman is going through all this, and oh, you know, he'll be fine. He's a dude. You know, he'll get over it. But it affects us the same way. So, so it's time to make it a safe place for men and women to come forward with these situations, so that way they can feel as though they can receive help.
Yes.
You know, because it's scary, especially just trying to get out of the relationship alone is a scary process. So feeling as though they have no resources, nowhere to turn is even a scarier, and you just feel like you're in this vicious prison that you just can't get out of. So when you actually have a safe place to go where you can talk to somebody or receive help, then, you know, you feel hopeful, because you're like, maybe I can get out of this. Maybe I can work it out with this person. But if it's to the point where it's like, okay, this is getting too dangerous, I need to get out. You know, that's when, you know,
that's one of those things that would help. Therapy would help you realize whether the relationship is healthy for you or not. Now, your practitioner might not sit there and tell you outright, but they'll explore your attachments.
Yeah.
Why you feel compelled to be with this person, things like that, and then really help you investigate whether, like, take an emotional, mental kind of inventory as far as like how you feel about your interactions and why and stuff. And you know, they do their best to try to be non-biased, but you're their client. They're always going to be more partial to you than anybody else.
Right.
So,
but there is resources. I know a lot of people think there's not, and especially if you're not financially in a position to escape yourself. I mean, I can't say it's these luxurious places that you can escape to, but you know, but there is help out there, and there's resources, and it's a temporary thing. I mean, it's better to be somewhere safe than continuing something that could be very dangerous in the end. So
right. And there is, when you're talking about there are things out there besides just seeing your mental health practitioner. There is also outreach organizations that you can go to. I do know that some of the DV organizations, sometimes they'll have shelters that are gender specific. So you know that might be an issue if you don't have one that's, you know, male oriented, in your area. But, you know, and then some places take kids, some don't take kids. But there's a lot more out there than we think. And I know, well, I don't know about when you had to leave your situation. I was aware of the situation, of the resources that would have been available to me if my ex was not on the board of directors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you saying that.
That blocked me from resources. So, because they didn't want to get involved because it was a conflict of interest.
Mm.
So, you know, I had to come up with another solution, but it is what it is.
But you did come up with a solution, so
yeah,
that's the point. You know, you did find a way.
Yes.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Thanks
and when
be
you're
to
ready
God.
to go. Yes.
You know, that everything sorted itself out for the best.
Absolutely. I'm thankful for that too. For your sake and both my sake. And our children's sake.
Yes, yeah. And you know what? For anybody who's listening to it right now and is like, they've gone through stuff and maybe it's still really raw for you. It does get better. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, it can feel really rough and you can feel scared and alone. Especially if the other person is accusing you of doing the stuff to them that they did to you.
Right.
But all of that considered, when you do get some time and space away from it, little bit by little bit, it does get better. And if you commit yourself to working on yourself and healing and releasing the trauma that you've incurred, then you don't have to stay in that mindset or that mode of operating where everything is scary and everything is triggering. It doesn't stay like that forever. Just promise yourself that you're going to work on it. And, you know, it could be one day working on it is just showing up to work.
Right.
You know, and then the next day it might be some more stuff. But you just don't give up on yourself.
No.
You know, we're here.
No. We're here.
Yeah, and we have plenty of great hypnotherapists. Even if, you know, we have a great community. Tons of amazing colleagues. And we're going to have some of them on the show too.
Yes,
yeah,
we are. Yes.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, absolutely. Me too. I'm excited. But with that being said, so I don't know where you're viewing this from, whether it be YouTube or I don't know what other platforms are you posting this on? Is it just Facebook?
We are also streaming to Twitch.
Okay.
Facebook was not streaming, so we will probably put the YouTube video on the...
Well, that's a bummer, but that's okay.
It was a technical issue, but we should have been streaming.
Yeah, you gotta love technology. But we do have a website, so just go to HypnoChix.com, or you could go to Facebook and join our group where we do have discussions on there and post our content regarding relationship strategies. So if you need any advice or you want to ask any questions or just, you know, join the chat and maybe put your own advice or suggestions in there, you're more than welcome to join the community and, you know, talk about some good old relationship and behavioral stuff, subconscious patterns, good old, you know, we talk about stuff like that, but mostly relationship strategies.
Yes, and I promise that we are going to get into some solutions here in the future. I know this episode and the last one were about things that could go wrong. But just because something is going wrong right now doesn't mean that you're doomed. There is ways to fix things if you want to. So don't tune out.
But it's good to identify. Yeah. So it's good to identify, like, you know, because people will say, I don't know what's wrong with me. Kind of like we were saying about the emos. Even physicists deal with it too. Like, what's wrong with me? Why is this never working for me? Why can I never, you know, get this right? And maybe by telling you, I mean, it's not wrong. It's just something that it's like you got to tweak it a little bit, right? I mean, it's just life. So maybe if you identify something as we're talking about, like, you know, these symptoms, you might identify something and be like, oh, well, maybe that's what's going on.
Let's not call them symptoms because you're just saying that something's wrong with them. They're just behavior patterns.
There you go, behavior patterns
over the years.
My bad. I'm a caregiver, so symptoms is like a word I use.
But that's not. That's
I know.
right now. Okay.
I know. I'm sorry. Like she said, behavior patterns.
Problems. Oh, you're fired.
I'm gonna
get somebody else to
take me to bed.
Anyway, so maybe like
patterns.
Patterns. Okay, because I do think that it's okay. If it was just emos, maybe nobody would ever come forward and resolve anything. Okay.
Yeah.
So we need the physicals to come forward, also because we're like. We lean more towards the introverted side, so we go out in public and we're like shy people, and we need our physical to go speak to the people because we won't do it.
Yeah, kind of like when you're at the grocery store and maybe your significant other or even your friend is like, go ask them where the lotion at, or go ask them where this is at, and it's like, I always gotta ask. Why can't you ask? Why do I gotta be the one who speaks up all the time?
Yeah, we're attracted to each other because we have assets that the other person is weaker on. And in theory, if we can co-regulate in a good way, then we actually like make it run smoothly. So there is always hope. But just because we get dysregulated and go into like this kind of chaotic, maybe trauma stage is it's called a trauma stage. But it doesn't mean that you have to be stuck there. There is ways to like reharmonize it if that's what you want to do, because sometimes it may have just gone, it's too far blown at that point and you're like, I really don't want to invest that kind of energy in this anymore. That's okay too. That's your decision. But if you both want to work on it, there are tools that we're going to get into to help you do that.
Right. So once you identify your behavior patterns, we will give you some solutions. If you want to enhance something in your life, or relationship.
Right. So, and I know we mentioned this in the post, but we haven't really talked about it in the podcast yet. These relationship patterns don't apply exclusively to romantic ones. So even though maybe you're not in a romantic relationship right now, all of this is still highly relevant to you because it could be your mom or your dad, your sister, your brother, your cousin, the people that you work with,
friends, coworkers. Yeah,
it's everybody. And once you learn it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is everywhere. I totally see it. And it helps you actually get along better with everybody. Totally worth it to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Agree 100%. So
get the book, follow along.
Yeah. And if you're interested in finding out what personality type you are through the EMP sexuality relationship strategies we provide on our
in the group, there's a post with the quiz.
Yes.
A link.
There is a link for you to take the quiz and get your percentage. Now, this isn't, 100% accurate. Usually you would have to book a session with us so that way we can, get your core traits and everything to make it accurate. But it does give you some accuracy. It's just we can go deeper and confirm. Yes,
because we'll talk about your family of origin and things like that. So we'll just go in a little bit deeper. But if this is your first time actually tuning in, you may want to watch that previous episodes where we lay out the foundations of the EMP model so that you can understand why an emo is an emo and why a fizz is a fizz. Because they are that way for different reasons, and their behaviors are very different.
Right.
But also, when besides their behaviors being different, the way they process information is also different. And that's why you both can either say you have the same priorities, or you could be talking about the same subject and swear to God that the other person knows exactly what you're talking about, but they don't.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I hope you come and join our community in our group on Facebook. Again, it's HypnoChix. Everything is HypnoChix, so it's easy to find. Just put in the search engine, HypnoChix. I think we're the only HypnoChix out there. But I think
there was one. There was on YouTube. Actually, there was another. That's why ours says HypnoChix podcast. There was somebody else like 7 years ago or something, and they have some interesting videos. Not podcast nature, just them kind of
Oh.
experimenting with what kind of things that they could do with hypnosis. But there's only a handful of them. That's not us.
Yeah, that's not us.
Yeah.
Okay, so visit us on YouTube. We have
Instagram,
Twitch,
TikTok.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we don't have right now is LinkedIn.
Right, we don't have a LinkedIn yet, but we're pretty easy to find. Just type us in the search engine, and you'll see us.
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I've talked enough.